As some of you might know, the manga illustrator Neko Kurage has been indicted for tax fraud. She was a bit ignorant while filing for her taxes, but luckily she's working on getting all of that fixed. Luckily for us, this hasn't hindered the production of season 2, nor has it stopped the fan base from exponentially growing. Then there's the author of Apothecary Diaries, Natsuhyuga, who's quite mysterious, and the only few things that I was able to find about them is that they have poured a lot of time into researching about herbs, poisoning, and apothecaries during the imperial era in China. And the only other thing that I know about them is that they're not quite fond, whether jokingly or not, of jinshin, simply because everybody seems to pay more attention to their favorite ship than the actual effort that the author has poured into the research relating to herbs and poison. The story takes place in a fictional country called Lei. It's modeled after, I believe, the Tang and the late Ming Dynasty of China. Obviously, there's a lot of other additional fun stuff that the authors added. Since it's a fictional country, it doesn't really have to be historically accurate at all. She's just trying to have fun while having us go on a mystery-solving journey with Momo. Instead of yapping about how the Ming Dynasty was, I'm gonna yap about how concubines, courtesans, and eunuchs around this time functioned in Imperial China. Concubines. All women living in the Forbidden City were isolated in the imperial quarters deep inside the palace. They were restricted to the inner court and forbidden from venturing out of the northern section. Most women in the Forbidden City were employed as maids and servants, but there was also a select group of concubines whose task was to bear children for the emperor. Those who gave birth to the male offspring were elevated to an imperial court with the empress at the top. The inner court was composed of three major groups of women: concubines, palace servants, and the royal princesses. So what was the selection process for a concubine for the emperor? Sometimes girls were brought to the Shenbu gate of the Forbidden City for inspection. They were accompanied by a relative or sometimes the head of the clan. According to this article from the South Morning China Post, as you can see in the diagram, this really pretty diagram shows us how honestly, the emperor could do whatever he wanted, okay? Like, you had to be really beautiful to satisfy the emperor. And right here on the first column on the left, it says that social background was no barrier, and the emperor chose concubines from the general public. The empress was the one exception. She was always selected from the family of a higher ranking official. They had to be in peak physical health. They also were trained, so they needed to know how to speak and talk in a particular way, have the gesture of a concubine, just knowing how to write, read, play chess, and dance. And of course, they needed to serve the emperor's mother as well. A strange thing that's written here is that they would undergo inspections while sleeping by the mother's side to weed out any weird nocturnal sleeping behaviors, such as snoring and emitting odors or talking or walking in sleep, which is so silly. Which is so silly. You can tell that they were so picky about the women that they chose. Let's talk about eunuchs now. Eunuchs were emasculated men who served as spies and protected the concubines and royal princesses living in the Forbidden City. Their primary goal was to protect the chastity of the ladies within the whole palace, and make sure nobody is getting harmed at all within the walls. Over time, eunuchs were able to exert enough influence on the emperor to gain control of state affairs and even cause the fall of some dynasties. The eunuch system finally came to an end on November 5th, 1924. So what were some reasons men became eunuchs? The first one is coercion. Little kids were sometimes coerced or even pressured by their parents into becoming eunuchs. They felt as if it was a great purpose to serve the emperor. And they would have a better lifestyle within the palace since eunuchs were well taken care of. Second was poverty. Some people were just so poor, it was better to live as a eunuch than to be eating dirt on the streets. Third was just free choice. Some people just wanted to be a eunuch. And fourth was punishment. Sometimes the emperor chose to have people turned into eunuchs, having all of that chopped off as punishment and serving within the walls instead of a death sentence. This is how they chopped off everything. You can pause or go to the article linked in the description. It's the South China Morning article titled Life Inside the Forbidden City by Marcelo. I think they did an amazing job. I used a lot of this information in this video. There's even additional information provided on why eunuchs kept their quote-unquote precious chopped off parts, known as bao, to either pass strict examinations or to be buried with them after they died to be complete again, I guess, while leaving the world. Eunuchs served multiple roles. They did everything. They carried the water. Okay, they would help with gardening. They didn't help with the cooking, that was up to the cooking staff, but they handled most things in the palace. They were very flexible with their job. The eunuchs built their own social structures, and in most cases they would also provide and support their birth clans whenever they could. Since some of them weren't fathers, they would try and help and promote their nephews as much as they could. I got a little sidetracked, but I found something, and it's divorcing an emperor? Around 1924 to 31, she was kicked out from the Forbidden City with the emperor and lived with him and his wife. In 1931, she wanted a divorce from the dethroned emperor. He granted her request, but also demoted her to a commoner, which she didn't care because girlie is free and a primary school teacher. We love that for her. But now let's move on to the role of courtesans. The origin of Chinese courtesan culture can be traced far as back as spring and autumn period, 7071 to 46 BC. In those ancient times, it was customary for kings and aristocrats to own slave consorts whose function was to perform music and dance at court functions and to serve their masters in bed. Many of the slave consorts and other street prostitutes were female relatives of defeated war enemies. All courtesans, musicians, actors, actresses, and prostitutes were bottled into a group called jinshin caste, which was hereditary. Marriage to commoners was strictly forbidden. The emperor in 1712 to 1755 handpicked top-rated musicians from music schools and trained them to be elite court entertainers. The prettiest girls from both the music and dance schools would usually end up being picked out to serve as imperial consorts in the emperor's harem. Courtesans became more cultivated in the arts, but in general, there was a negative attitude towards them. In the late Ming Dynasty, cultivated courtesans came to be highly valued, and in some cases, some of them were able to be married off into noble or high-ranking families. It wasn't until the Qing Dynasty that courtesans, musicians, and prostitutes were able to kind of be freed from the jinshin caste system that they had created. So, yay for them, I guess. So they just got to be regular old commoners, which I think is better than being considered worthless, which is quite harsh. In the Apothecary Diaries, the verdigris house operates with a ranked-based system, meaning the better courtesans that can either sing, dance, play chess, do art, any sort of calligraphy, read and write, are at the top and earn the most and are the most expensive to acquire. Whereas those who aren't that skilled or talented and aren't as pretty are lower ranking courtesans. The verdigris house, I believe, mainly has middle to high ranking courtesans. I don't know if they have like the really low ranking ones, because I think the low ranking ones just take customers immediately and become prostitutes immediately. Courtesan is quite blurry. I know that it can get quite confusing when watching Apothecary Diaries, because some courtesans, like I think maomao, takes clients, or is it Pairi? Pairi, I think, takes customers and actually engages in physical activity, but it doesn't lower her value at all. So it can be a little blurry and more open. If you remember from the anime, a low-ranked courtesan can be visited more often than the higher-ranked ones, right? Because the higher-ranked ones cost a lot. The higher-ranked ones also tend to be approached by the most wealthiest clients as well. I also think it's mainly because the old lady running it, madam, is a little money-faced here and there, and wants to uphold the verdigris status after things went sour a few years ago regarding Maomao's mother. Courtesans can be bought by customers. They can choose to pay off the amount the courtesan still owes to the brothel, plus the expenses needed for the send-off party. A courtesan's price can be lowered as the following. 1. If they are perceived to have mental health issues such as sleepwalking. Maomao encounters this mystery in regards to a concubine in episode 3 when the servants around the rear palace report seeing a lady in white dancing at night around the walls. Second is by the loss of virginity, and third is by becoming pregnant, which completely drops their value down. So they can go from a completely high-ranking courtesan to taking customers immediately and maybe getting an STD. And then they suffer, like Maomao's mother did. In one of the episodes, Maomao was able to get a military officer, Li Haku, a visit with Paidi, one of the 3 princesses of the Verdigris house, in exchange for her helping her visit the Verdigris house, which happens to be her birthplace since her mother, Feng Xiang, once used to be the most sought-out courtesan before she became pregnant, was forced to take regular customers, eventually catching some sort of STD and losing her sanity in the process, while waiting for Lakan to show up. Mao Mao's biological father didn't even know about Mao Mao's mother being pregnant, and he had just left abroad, so he didn't find out till way later, till he returned back from his trip 3 years later. But by the time he showed up at the Verdigris house, no one would tell him where Fang Xing was. The older madam had locked up Mao Mao's mother in one of the hidden rooms, right far away from Lakan's grasp. He never stopped looking for her, but we do get to see a happy ending for those two by the end of season 1. Episodes 21 to 24, there's such a roller coaster of emotions. I'm not doing it any justice by oversimplifying it, so you gotta rewatch that, or if you haven't seen Apothecary Diaries, please watch it. It is a lot of fun. Well, it's got a lot of dark topics and themes going on with a very fun and happy tone. So, it's fun in that sense. A different day, different outfit, but we're still talking about Mao Mao. So who is Mao Mao? Mao Mao is a 17-year-old girl who lives in the country of Li. I think it's Li, or is it Lei? I think it's Li. One day, on her way back from the town on errands, she gets distracted by herb plants and starts plucking away at them. Unbeknownst to her, there were 3 kidnappers nearby who snuck up on her and yoinked her away. They sold her to the rear palace as a servant in order to make some quick cash, plus royalties, through the wages she earned at the palace. It's a shitty tactic that was fairly common, and her father even warned her about being careful since there were kidnappers around. It sucks, and instead of letting this horrible situation completely destroy her, shedding a tear, moping about it, because I know I would be depressed about this shit and it would take me a while to bounce back, she just shrugs it off like it's another day.
Damn, Dad is gonna be pretty worried when I don't come back.
This girl just adapts a little too fast for me. But hey, at least she's getting paid wages, right? And she can finish her contract in 2 years and go back home. And she's surrounded by other women. And so it's not that bad entirely, So here she is in the rear palace. The rear palace is a spot where the emperor has his concubines set up. There's the only men that are allowed in the rear palace are the eunuchs, the only men, and men who have had their privates chopped off, right? And everyone else are women, other than the doctor, the physician. But I think he also is someone who has had his privates chopped off, but I could be wrong. But Mao Mao is able to make a friend with this cute girl that I am very invested in and I really liked, called Xiaodan, and I want to learn more about her. Apparently in the manga she gets more opportunities and screen time. But yeah, she makes a friend and she's really sweet. They both get along, and something really unique that Mao Mao does in this anime is she puts on fake freckles because she wants to be perceived as unattractive and unapproachable and doesn't want to risk being attacked by men in alleyways. And this is something that she picked up at the house of the Verdigris house, which I was kind of shocked at because I think freckles are kind of cute and they're really natural, but I didn't realize that freckles are perceived as something that is considered ugly. So it kind of led me down to just researching stuff, Googling stuff, looking up the history of freckles. And I am very surprised because you know how a lot of girls will now, part of like e-girl makeup and like cutesy makeup, put on fake freckles. It's like quite the opposite now. But I did find this really sad article pointing out how Zara, the fashion brand, had some sort of campaign happening in Spain, and they used a Chinese model and had her just be natural, just have her wear lipstick and no, like, I don't think she wore foundation. She just wore her natural face. She just happens to have freckles, and a lot of people made a huge deal about it. So I guess I'd never realized how freckles are perceived as something that's ugly, but you know, I'm educated now. I still don't think they're ugly. Most servant girls can't read or write, and Maomao clings onto that and does her best to hide the fact that she's literate, just so her kidnappers don't earn more from her wages. She begins working at the rear palace as a servant girl, but that quickly changes when two high-status concubines and their infants fall ill. No one has the slightest clue as to what's going on, not even the royal physician appointed to the concubines. There's a cat fight between the two concubines, and Maomao takes a peek at the buzz. Both the concubines' babies are sick, and no known reason has been determined. So the two start squabbling, and one accuses the other, and they're, just squabbling back and forth. One thing Maomao does know is about the signs and symptoms that people have talked about that the two concubines and their infants are facing. So she starts walking away from the scene, mumbling to herself, trying to figure out this mystery and wondering if all the symptoms that she's been made aware of might actually be what she perceives and thinks is poisoning. Now, I have to mention how much of a poison nerd Mama really is. She poisons herself like a madman, though her father would argue that she's more of a mad scientist. She does this to grow resistance to the poison, all while trying to figure out a cure for them.
That's my little mad scientist.
Like I was saying, she starts mumbling to herself about the possibility of poisoning. While walking off, she says, "I need something to write with," or something along those lines, when the very handsome and popular head eunuch of the rear and inner palace passes by her and happens to overhear her rambling. After this incident, Maomao rips pieces of cloth to write a warning for the two concubines about the possible issue causing the illness. The culprit? The face powder that the women wear. The face powder contains poison, and even the tiniest exposure to it was deadly to the babies. So every time the moms would embrace their babies, they would be poisoning their children without realizing it. Sadly, one of the concubines, Lady Li Hua, tosses away Maomao's warning, and as a result, loses her baby to the poisoning. On the other hand, Lady Gyokugo, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce her name. I've tried multiple times to say her name. Gyokugo is all I can say, but Lady Gyoko, or Gyokugo, takes Maomao's warning seriously and halts the use of the face powder and discards the rest immediately. The warnings that were sent to the concubines catches Jinshin's eye, and he remembers how one of the servant girls was mumbling about possibly writing a warning. In order to sniff out the guardian angel, he devises a plan to summon all of the servant girls to his office. Once there, he holds up a paper instructing the person there to stay. And oops, Maomao reacts not only to the writing, but has a delayed reaction of walking away, exposing herself to Jinshin in the process that she, in fact, can read and write. She shit-talks him in her mind while preparing for her demise. Is she going to be punished? Is she going to be beheaded? What's going to happen to her? She always considers herself as a lowly peasant and is always realistic about the fact that the kingdom might just see her as a super disposable person and that she's worth nothing. So she's constantly thinking about how something bad's going to happen to her. But to her surprise, that doesn't happen. Instead, she gets promoted. She's going to be Lady Gyokugo's new lady-in-waiting. This offer confused the heck out of Maomao. Why is she getting a promotion? She can't really wrap her head around the kindness that's being offered to her. Like I said, Maomao is very down to earth and she's very well aware of her status as a commoner and how she can be seen as as a very replaceable individual. So she can't really figure out why they are seeing some value in her. You know, her knowledge in poison and herb is very valuable, but right now she can't really see the point of that value. She always tries to do her best to avoid sticking out from the rest and does her best to kind of be as invisible and small as she can be so that people don't pay attention to her, because she's trying to avoid trouble as much as she can. But she is a curious one and is always thirsting for knowledge, especially when it comes to poison. Maomao's new daily task as Lady Gyokugo's lady-in-waiting is a poison taster, her dream job.
Poison? I must be dreaming!
From here on, Maomao is presented with many mini mysteries that are part of a bigger plot. It's fun watching her use her knowledge of medicine, poison, and basic deduction to reach the conclusions that she does. I also enjoyed watching how Jinshin and Maomao interacted with each other, how Jinshin finds himself simping for Maomao, and how she's slowly growing fond of his company. The three other ladies in waiting, Ailan, Inghua, and Guiyan, are such compassionate besties who shower Maomao with so much love and care, and as they should, because Maomao deserves it. I loved watching them interact and support her as much as they could. Maomao is resilient not only because of her ability to adapt to tough situations like being sold to the palace, but also because of her ability to grow and learn from her childhood traumas, like her mother chopping off her pinky when she was an infant to send to her biological father as a curse. And not to mention the pestering biological father, Lakan, who would show up eventually, pestering Maomao to live with him eventually, which she didn't appreciate because she doesn't really consider him a father figure. She's an amazing individual who loves her adoptive father so much and has learned so many skills from him. I love the way she talks about Loman and how she, at any given opportunity, promotes his practice. Because she knows her dad is really bad at marketing his apothecary practice, she knows that she needs to hype up her dad's practice so that he can earn a little bit of money, because if it were up to him, he'd just do it for free. It just made me think of how much love Lauman must have showered Maomao with, because she turned out just fine, like despite having shitty biological parents and growing up in like the Verdigris house, she turned out fine. I feel like I would have been a huge mess. Her parents' love story is quite tragic, but she turned out just fine, except when she's pissed, like in episode 4, when she was requested by the emperor to take care of a very ill lady lishu who showed no signs of recovering. Her ladies in waiting were still applying the poison makeup on her despite all the powders being confiscated and banned. Maomao couldn't stand how ignorant some of these girls were and goes off on them.
Obviously.
I see.
What is wrong with you?
Stop it!
From here, we get to see Maomao attend the garden party, all dolled up, and find out that her freckles are actually really fake, to keep creepy men away. At the garden, she gets handed 3 hairpins, one from Jinshi, who is crushing on her, one from Lihaku, a high-ranking officer, and the last one from Lady Lihua, as a thanks for aiding her back to health. At the garden party, she's the only poison taster who absolutely is enjoying it. She is absolutely thrilled when the second dish that they are served turns out to be actual poison. RIP to the minister who drank the poison soup before Maomao tested it, I guess. I mean, they did, like, give him medicine and whatnot for recovery, but why did you do that, sir? But anyway, she zooms out of the hall and runs to the water fountains to drink water, and is dying to finish the rest of the soup, but Jinshin finds her and demands for her to get medical attention. From this point on, Maomao starts finding clues to a bigger mystery. And the bigger mystery is trying to figure out who is out to kill the concubines. Which concubine exactly? And it's really impressive how the author wrote all of the mini mysteries that helped uncover the bigger plot of the show. Long story short, if you've seen this show, you already know that it was Feng Ming, Lady Ado's first lady-in-waiting, that has been going on a little witch hunt. She's trying to help Lady Ado stay as the concubine instead of being let go, since she's 35 and considered too old to be a concubine, which is wild. Crazy. Anyway, but she is also trying to kill Lady Lishu, since Lady Lishu was the one who made Feng Ming aware of how when she was a baby, she almost died because of her allergy to honey. This is a huge deal since Lady Ado's infant had died, and sadly, Feng Ming, whose family owns a honey business, well, she had fed the baby some of that honey. Of course, this is kind of little soap opera territory, but the baby that might have actually been the Empress's child got swapped with Lady Ado's, so Lady Ado's actual baby might still be alive. Feng Ming is trying to hide the fact that she might have been the reason Lady Ado's baby is dead, aka the actual Empress's, because there was a baby swap, right? So Feng Ming decides, hunting down the concubines we go. Of course, Feng Ming is unsuccessful since Maomao figures the shit out and prevents Lishu from being harmed and encourages Feng Ming to turn herself in. As a result, Maomao finds herself getting fired. So basically, everyone associated with Feng Ming was being laid off from the palace, and unfortunately for Maomao, her kidnappers are considered her quote-unquote family, and they had connections with Feng Ming, so she's fired. Jinshi didn't really want to fire her, but he misunderstood Maomao's speech and thought that she hated living at the Rare Palace and wanted to set her free.
I can speak to someone. Wallaby.
So that makes it okay to talk behind my back? Come on, senpai, would you please stop growing mushrooms in other people's closets?
This sucks for Maomao because now she has to work at the Verdigris house, and the madam is trying to convince her to become a courtesan. Yikes. She heads to a private party and ends up finding a sulking Jinshi who flirts with her and shows up the next day at the Verdigris house to buy her contract from the madam. Maomao is now back at the palace, baby, except she isn't at the rear palace and works for Jinshin at the outer palace. Her mini mystery solving continues with the addition of her biological parents, Lakan, attempting to make contact with her. If you still haven't watched the Apothecary Diaries, I highly encourage you to go check it out. I want to share one of my favorite sleuthing moments of Maomao, which was in episode 14. And in this episode, at the beginning, a warehouse explodes, right? And throughout the episode, Maomao joins Lihaku and tries to figure out what went wrong and what caused the fire at this point. They weren't considering it a proper explosion. It's so cool to see how knowledgeable Maomao really is, because she comes up with an idea when she sees the contents of the warehouse, and almost all of the warehouses around that area had the same thing, which was old flour. She starts wondering if the old, really refined powder is what kind of acted as gunpowder, right? And it caused the explosion when exposed to fire. So she conducts a mini experiment to test that hypothesis of her. And it was just so cool to see that that's actually what it turned out to be. It turned out to be the really old flour, really refined flour that was stored at these warehouses when exposed to fire caused the explosion. So she's like, hey, let the officers know not to go inside for smoke breaks, smoke outside. It's just cool. Like, I would have never even thought of, like, she's just so fucking smart for that era. No Google? Damn. The other one that was really good was, I'm not quite sure which episode it was, either episode 16 or a little bit earlier, was when a man had killed his brother. And the way he did that was by swapping out the kind of seaweed that his brother would normally eat. The seaweed that he got was from a region where they wouldn't actually eat the seaweed because it was poisonous. And because, you know, his brother wasn't familiar with this new seaweed, there was no way he would have known that this type of seaweed was not good to eat. So that was really cool to see how she was able to figure out, with the help of Basin, I think his name is, how that seaweed, just because it's from a different region, really impacted whether it was edible or not, or safe to eat or not. So I just think it's really cool how she's able to just like figure out shit. If you've seen this show, let me know your favorite sleuthing moment, or mini mystery, or even the bigger mystery from Apothecary Diaries. So moving on, I'd like to really quickly talk a little bit about the chemistry between Jinshi and Maomao, right? Because A lot of people are like, about it. And I don't know, I really like the banter between the two. I think it's cool. I'm okay with if Mama ends up with him or if she doesn't. I'm fine with it. But right now, I'm enjoying this little journey and interaction between the two.
What was that about?
Please, I'm of lowly birth. It's not right for you to touch me.
You're the only one who has ever used that excuse.
I just like how natural their banter is. I feel like Natsu is really talented writer, because that can be kind of hard to pull off sometimes. We don't know this at first, but Jinshin might not actually be a eunuch, but the crown prince himself in disguise. He isn't actually 24, but a 19-year-old given the task of taking care of the rear and outer palace. He is such a goofball who charms all the ladies around him and is frustrated when Maomao doesn't fall for his looks, teasing and toying around with her till he finds himself entranced by her death glare and in deep admiration for her knowledge. Him handing his hairpin to her was a way of showing his interest in her, which completely flies over her head and doesn't register because Mama doesn't realize what hairpins, like handing a hairpin, could also mean. She only sees it as a way of being able to be escorted outside of the palace to go back home. So she's not really registering like, hey, this also means that the guy wants to maybe possibly marry you or is into you. So it's kind of cute seeing how Maomao is. Maomao goes from cussing him out at every moment in her mind to slowly showing all her dorky sides to him. And like I said, Jinshin goes from admiring her talents to slowly falling for her beauty and personality.
I shall be waiting for you in the parlor.
As a slow burn romance lover, I absolutely love how the banter is slowly making them grow closer to each other, and you definitely see how much more comfortable and closer they are by the end of season 1 in episode 24. I am itching to read the manga, but I kind of want to wait because I know the anime is going to come out. The season 2 is going to come out next year, so I kind of want to watch it be animated, I love the little bit of mystery and the blossoming love in this show. It's just too cute. Lastly, before ending this video, I'd like to really quickly talk about the bullying that Lady Lishu endures. Also, Lady Lishu is way too young. The last emperor, brother, jail, but except he's dead. Isolation can be used to gain power and control over someone. Controlling an individual's finances can increase the chances of an abused staying in an uncomfortable living situation due to financial dependency. It reduces the chances of escape from an abusive environment and makes a person more dependent on their abuser. Isolation includes controlling a person's social activity, whom they see, whom they talk to, where they go, and any method to limit their access to others. In this case, Lishu is more dependent on her ladies-in-waiting and relies on their advice to participate in daily tasks and functions. Kind of like how she probably went to them for advice on what kind of outfits to wear to the garden party, and they kind of just screwed her over by telling her to wear pink when that color belongs to another concubine, and it kind of clashed, right? And she didn't really match with the ladies-in-waiting as well, so they're just sabotaging her with the little things. The type of bullying Lishu endures is indirect. There is no physical threat or direct confrontation from her ladies-in-waiting, but instead they choose to leave her out of most things, right? They isolate her from other concubines, they create rifts with other ladies-in-waiting, they're picking fights with whomever, specifically Maomao when they try to get close to Lishu. Like Maomao at a certain point wants to learn about Lady Lishu's allergies and wants to learn about whether she's allergic to honey and even the fish stuff, right? Her ladies-in-waiting always talk smack about Lishu in the corner, but they know that she can hear. They always say, oh, she's such a picky eater, she's such a brat, but they're not even trying to understand why she is the way she is. She's just allergic, she can die, but they don't care. The only women that Lady Lishu can comfortably rely on are her ladies-in-waiting. They are the closest people to her and the only ones that can protect her, but unfortunately, her ladies-in-waiting are garbage. And you need to have ladies-in-waiting that you can rely on and trust because, as we've seen in the show, other concubines have come under attack by other concubines that are trying to take them down because they're trying to win the emperor's attention, right? So, you really can't trust nobody. It sucks. and she's just 14 years old. She was younger when she first started being a concubine. The previous emperor, like I said, straight to jail, but he's dead. Straight to jail. My God. Eye rolling, crossing your eyes, you know, very Mean Girls vibe, talking nasty about Lishu while walking away, spreading misinformation about her, just really little things that add to her bullying, and avoiding the burden of being a bully at any cost, because these are ladies in waiting and they can be beheaded by the emperor if the emperor finds out that Lishu's ladies in waiting are being shitty. So I just wanted to really quickly touch on that bullying part because it sucked, and it added a lot more personality to Lishu. She went from just being seen as a bratty, entitled concubine to, well, she's being misled. She's a child. She's 14. She's just been taken advantage of, surrounded by people that are praying for her downfall, and she doesn't even realize it because she thinks that they're all nice and friendly and they're all friends, but they're not. They hate her. If you've seen Apothecary Diaries, what's your favorite part? What did you like? Do you like the Jinshin maomao pairing? What are your thoughts in the show? What are your overall thoughts of the show? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you think it's fun? Do you think it's comfort? What are your thoughts? I'm enjoying it so far. I actually gobbled it up in like 2 days. I wasn't expecting that. I wanted to get more nerdy about it and learn more about the world, but that would require me reading more of the manga, which I'm trying to stay away from because I want to watch the season 2 like without any knowledge of what happens in the manga. But I am itching to go read it, or the light novel. But there are other few characters that I found really interesting in the show. I liked Gaoshin. I already said I liked the servant girl. I forgot her name already. Damn. I hope to see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Meow Tavern out. Bye bye.